Vishnupadaaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminati Namne Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharne Nirvisesh Sumvad Paschat Deshtarne Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Yes. Next slide. Okay. So yesterday in chapter 8, verse 14, Krishna says that he is easily attainable by the pure devotees who are always thinking of him. So then in chapter 9, he is now going to reveal to us how to become such a pure devotee. Okay, so next slide. So verses 1 to 10, 1 and 2 glorifies the contents of this chapter. As you know, the topic of this chapter is the most confidential knowledge. And faithless persons have to return to the path of birth and death. Bhagavad Gita 9.3. 4 to 10 explains his opulence so that a non-envious person can fix his devotion on Krishna. Also, his inconceivable relationship with the material world. All, amazing facts we're going to see. Okay, next slide. So, this entire summary of the entire Bhagavad Gita is there in this chapter 9. That's how important it is. It's right in the middle of the Bhagavad Gita. You know, we have 18 chapters and this chapter is right in the middle, and the last verse of this chapter is the most important verse. So, okay. In chapter 1, what we see, devotional service is the most confidential knowledge. And so far we've had, first he gave us knowledge in the second chapter about what we are. We are not the body, we're the soul. And then he also gave more confidential knowledge in the 7th chapter about his opulences, and how in the last chapter also we saw how a devotional service to him is the best. But here he is revealing to us about pure devotional service. Yeah, the photos have to appear, right? Photos are not there. Yeah. And we have to hear the knowledge of Krishna. So it's a practical science, consists of 9-fold activities. Okay, so I'll read the verse first to you. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Arjuna, because you're never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence." So that is the purpose for which Krishna is telling all this about himself, because he wants to destroy the miseries which are affecting us. And so it is a practical science, he says. This, why? Because it consists of activities, 9-fold activities, not something abstract that you have to control and then meditate and all that. It's the process is something filled with activities, and then it can be understood by a non-envious person. Because when Krishna is talking about his glories and how he is the supreme and so on, an envious person will not like to hear that. And so he will twist the meaning and he will not be able to assimilate it. So only a non-envious person can understand this, and to hear knowledge of Krishna from realized devotees. Because devotees are always coming together to discuss and understand things about Krishna. And because they are rendering devotional services to the Lord, they have deep understandings about Krishna. Krishna reveals it within their heart. And so when you discuss among devotees, you hear about the realizations of the truths that Krishna himself mentions. It has to be realized. Otherwise, either it just remains a theory or it will be twisted by those who are not devotees. Krishna sees sincerity and blesses with understanding. So this is not just an academic knowledge that we can just read and understand. We need the blessings of Krishna. And so when we discuss among devotees, then Krishna is very happy. He appears and he blesses all of us to have the proper understanding. Yes. Next slide. Knowledge of pure bhakti is the king of education. The second verse, Krishna says, this knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed. So he is again glorifying pure devotional service. Okay, he's calling it the king of education. So in terms of knowledge of philosophy and so on, we have 6 philosophers who have propounded different philosophies. They are the philosophers are Kanada, Kapila, Gautama, Yajnavalkya, and then Chandilya and Vaishwanara. These are the 6 major philosophers. And then Vyasadeva himself has written the Vedanta Sutra. So this is above all that education, and it's also the essence of Vedic knowledge. Because Krishna says in the Vedas that Vedaischa sarvair, in Bhagavad Gita he says, Vedaischa sarvair ahameva vedya. So among the purpose of the Vedas is simply to understand me. So, and then, and also academic knowledge it talks only of matter, material things. So if you consider all kinds of education, this is the king, because knowing that in the 2nd chapter and so on, he talks about just knowledge about that we are not the body and we are the soul. But here, to some extent, the relationship between devotee and the Lord is mentioned in the 7th chapter and 8th chapter. But here Krishna is talking about the intimate relationship, pure devotion. So that is why it is the most confidential and it is the king of all education. And why is it the perfection of religion? Because it's based on realization and not dependent on high birth or extensive knowledge. So you don't see those who are very 6 philosophers. Okay. Gautama, Kanada, Kapila, Yajnavalkya, Chandilya, and Jaimini. Vaishwanara. So this it is based on realization and not dependent on high birth or extensive knowledge. So he's talking about knowledge. This is a king of education, and he says that it is not dependent on extensive knowledge. So what does that mean? This is knowledge about Krishna. It is not just ordinary knowledge. And we can understand how in the life of Narada Muni, he was born in a maidservant's, as a maidservant's son, and he never received any education. And he didn't have any opportunity to also learn all these things. He didn't go to a Gurukul or anything. He was just accompanying his mother, who was working in people's homes and cleaning things. And somehow, during one season of Chaturmasya, rainy season, 4 months, when, these Vaishnavas had come to their village, and they were staying in a place, and because in the 4 months they don't travel. So Narada Muni's mother, she was cleaning for them. And whenever she was not there, the vessels and the rooms and so on. And whenever she was not there, even Narada Muni himself used to do all the work. So he used to keep listening to whatever they are speaking that knowledge he got, and simultaneously he was also serving them. And while he was washing their plates and all that, he requested, because they would leave some food behind, he would request them, can I took their permission, and he used to eat that. So by doing service, his heart was getting purified. He was getting that same, his material desires were getting, and they were all getting wiped out. And he was developing the same pure-heartedness of the great devotees. So he could assimilate all that knowledge. So from that, we see how realization is not dependent on high birth or extensive knowledge. He didn't have any knowledge, but he was hearing that. And whatever he heard, he could assimilate it because he was rendering with a service mind. And with their blessings, he could understand everything. And he also says, it is the purest knowledge. Here it's not mentioned, but the text, it says, the verse, it is the purest knowledge. Why is it the purest knowledge? Because it purifies us from all our sinful reactions. Because we have gone through so many births, and we have committed in the course of our materialistic life many sinful activities, and they form the karma. They are in the form of a seed. Some of them are in the form of a seed. Maybe we have stopped those sinful activities, but the reactions are there in the form of a seed. And some of them have started sprouting, just showing, what's going to come. A little bit we are experiencing. And some of them have grown into a full-blown tree. And then it's also giving fruits and flowers and all that, and we are undergoing that suffering. So in this way, there are different stages of sinful reactions. But when we undertake devotional service to the Lord, starting with Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, and so on, then what happens? All these sinful reactions in whatever state, right from seed stage to sprouted stage and so on, everything is wiped out. Only prarabdha karma, or something which is already manifest, like our body. We've got this body because of previous karma. That cannot be wiped out. But otherwise, whatever suffering and whatever other material experiences, everything gets wiped out. So it's the purest and joyfully performed at every stage. So all the activities of Krishna consciousness are very joyful. Eating prasadam is one thing. Many people are attracted to Krishna consciousness. First experience that they have of Krishna consciousness is eating prasadam. And so they really like it because it's got a special taste. Unfortunately, on Zoom, we cannot serve you prasadam. Otherwise, every program of ours is always followed by a very nice feast so that you can taste Krishna through prasadam. So that is joyful. And then we also have singing. We have kirtan and dancing, and then feasting, and then also listening about Krishna Katha. So everything is joyful. There's no pain or suffering. And eternally existing even after liberation. So he's saying it is eternal, right? And because it gives direct perception of it is perfection of religion, it is everlasting. So it is everlasting. It is not that I'm just serving Krishna now, and then once I'm liberated, I don't need to worship him. It's not time-serving devotion, because the Mayavadis do like that. The Mayavadis have a guru, or they worship some devata only as long as they get liberation. After that, they say that this is just like a ladder. You climb the ladder like guru or form of devatas, any form for that matter, is just like a ladder. You reach the top and then you can throw away the ladder. So this is not like that. Even after liberation, the devotees will always like to keep serving the Lord. Okay. Next slide. The third verse says, in fact, every verse of this chapter is so wonderful. And each one is giving such deep meanings that I am forced to read every verse. Third one. is, those who are not faithful in this devotional service cannot attain me, O conqueror of enemies. Therefore, they return to the path of birth and death in this material world. So, faith is a very important thing in our spiritual advancement and in devotional service, especially. What is faith? It is the complete conviction that devotional service can give all perfection. Simply by taking shelter of Krishna and serving him, every perfection is available, whatever it is. So that is called faith. And faith, right from even your material life and to all spiritual perfections. Simply by, we don't need to do any other ritual. So that kind of faith, the more faith we have, the more we'll make advancement. And it's the most important element of progress in spiritual consciousness. Development of faith to process. So Krishna consciousness is a process. We have we start with chanting and hearing and then remembering him and worshipping him and serving him. And then like this, it keeps progressing. So it is a process. And through that, our faith keeps on increasing. Difficult path for those without faith. So we'll return to birth and death. So there are three types of devotees. Those who come because of some motive. Maybe they are distressed or, they seek something. And after some time, when their desires are fulfilled, then they don't have much knowledge and they don't have the desire to continue. So they leave. They don't have enough faith that Krishna is the supreme and we have an eternal relationship because of lack of knowledge. And they are not so sincere. Then the second class devotees are those, they have a strong faith and they are, serving and they're associating with the devotees and engaged in devotional service. And because they've had some realization, they never leave. They have got strong faith, but they may not know so much of scriptural knowledge. They may not have. Then the first class devotees are those who have complete faith based on knowledge, based on the scriptures, Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. And they, of course, will never leave Krishna consciousness. So, so we have to, even if we start without much faith, we must keep progressing. And then only easily we can get Krishna consciousness. Yes. Next slide. So now, very important things he's talking about his relationship with this material world. 9.4, he says, by me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. So this is a contradiction. He's saying that he is everywhere spread through his energy. So, and he's saying that everybody is situated in him, but he is not situated in everyone. So how to understand this? And Prabhupada gives a nice analogy that when a king, every department that is functioning in the country, in his kingdom, is all functioning because of him, because of his authority, because of his instructions. They're all following his authority. So in one sense, everywhere the king is there, but at the same time, he's not there. Everything is resting on him, depending upon his, authority. And yet at the same time, he's not personally present in those departments. So in the same way, Krishna's energies are spread everywhere and they are doing all the work. And because the energy is connected with the energetic, they are representing Krishna. So Krishna is everywhere. And all beings are in him because of this, but he is not in them. And then text 5, he says, and yet everything that is created does not rest in me. Behold my mystic opulence. Although I'm the maintainer of all living entities, and although I'm everywhere, I'm not a part of this cosmic manifestation. For myself is the very source of creation. So just in the previous verse, he said, all beings are in me. Okay, the entire, so, and here he is saying, and yet, please go to the previous slide, yeah. And yet everything that is created does not rest in me. So what is that? That is so it means that he is aloof from it. Everything is resting on his energy, but it's not as if he is totally involved in that. He is aloof. Behold my mystic opulence. This is only possible because of his mystic opulence. Although I'm the maintainer of all living entities, and although I'm everywhere, I'm not a part of this cosmic manifestation. He doesn't get involved with this. For myself is the very source of creation. He only creates everything. He sets up everything. He makes material energy function everything. And then he is completely aloof. Even though she doesn't function without Krishna's, she's not independent of Krishna. And yet Krishna is completely aloof. He just creates it for us. And then he is, and everything happens because of him and by his instructions. And yet he is aloof. So that is his mystic opulence. Yes. 9.1 minute, 9.6. The analogy of example of the wind and the sky. So he's trying to explain it even more, how this is possible. With a material, this thing, example, understand that as the mighty wind blowing everywhere rests always in the sky, all created beings rest in me. So we see that the sky is like an inverted bowl. Okay? And then the wind is blowing. Wind is blowing, moving things and all that. But it doesn't go beyond the sky. It is within the circumference of the sky. And so in the same way, this is the relationship. The wind does not mix with the sky. The sky is setting the boundary and allows the wind to do whatever it wants. I mean, wind has got the freedom to move around as it likes, but it is bounded by the circumference of the sky. So in that sense, the sky is the controller, and it doesn't mix with the air. It is giving it its freedom to choose wherever to blow within that range. So in the same way, but he is still aloof and personal. He is aloof, and yet it is not that, he is not connected with the material energy. And because he says that I am everywhere, it doesn't mean that he has become impersonal. Because in the material world, you see something is just distributed everywhere, then it becomes, for example, you take a paper and then you tear it into pieces and you spread it everywhere. Then the paper does not exist anymore. It is diffused. But Krishna is not like that. Even though his energy is spread everywhere, he is still a person and not perceivable through gross senses. He says it's unmanifest. And why is he unmanifest? Because we cannot see him with our gross senses, but can see him within and without through devotional service. So we have examples of great devotees like Prahlad Maharaj and so on, who was seeing Krishna everywhere, and he was not at all disturbed when he was being thrown into all kind of dungeon of snakes, thrown down the mountain, or thrown under an elephant. At all times, he was just chanting Hare Krishna, and he knew Krishna is everywhere, not at all disturbed. So through devotional service, we can understand Krishna's existence everywhere. Yes, next. Next slide. Yeah. After this, he says about the material thing, world. O son of Kunti, at the end of the millennium, all material manifestations enter into my nature. And at the beginning of another millennium, by my potency, I create them again. So this is the cyclical process of material creation and annihilation, which happens. So millennium means like after every yuga cycle. So here yesterday also we saw the lifespan of Brahma. At the end of the millennium means at the death of Brahma. And Brahma lives for 100 years, and his one day is calculated as, the total of 4,300,000,000 earthly years. His night is of the same duration, and his month consists of 30 such days and nights, and his year of 12 months. So this, and it comes to 311 trillion, 4 billion years. So, totally his lifespan. One day is calculated as 4,300,000,000 years. And then his total, this thing is 311 trillion and 4 billion years. So extraordinary. We can't even imagine this kind of lifespan. His month consists of, okay, after 100 such years, when Brahma dies, the devastation or annihilation takes place. This means that the energy manifested by the Supreme Lord is again wound up in himself. Everything originated, you can see in the picture on top, how Mahavishnu is lying, and then from his pores, unlimited universes are coming out in his breathing. When he breathes out, all these universes are coming. And when he breathes in, the universes enter his body. So at the time of Brahma's death, the universe is sucked into his body, and all the living entities are also, they are the ones who enter his body and lie dormant. That's what he's saying. And then 9.8, the whole cosmic order is under me. Under my will, it is automatically manifested again and again. And under my will, it is annihilated at the end. So just see, Krishna is just lying there. He's not doing anything, but he's just willing it. He decides, okay, let there be something. And then automatically everything, we can't even make out when it happened, how it happened. That is the Lord's mystic power. So this is saying the whole cosmic order is under me. Under my will, it is automatically manifested again and again. So that is really amazing. It seems like magic to us. It's his mystic power. And under my will, it is annihilated at the end. Then 9.9, O Dhananjaya, all this work cannot bind me. I'm ever detached from all these material activities, seated as though neutral. So Krishna does not get affected by all these things, what's happening in the material world. He's not disturbed by, all these pain and suffering, or excited about some enjoyment of who's doing what. He doesn't. He's very neutral. He's not at all affected by anything. And very detached and above. He's transcendental. So he's not like one of us who are bound by material energy. And see in this picture about Brahma's, the Kalpa, life of Brahma, total life is 311, 4 billion, trillion and 4 billion years. So Kalpa is 1 day of Brahma and 4.32 billion years. That is the duration of that Kalpa. And at the end of which, there's a partial dissolution. And that leads to a night. Partial dissolution, Brahmaloka and all are there, but other lower planetary systems are destroyed. Then after that, again creation, Brahma again creates like this. And then 71 there are 71 Manus in 1 day of Brahma. Manvantara, that is called. Every period of Manu is called a Manvantara. And then a Divya Yuga is 4,000 into 1, one Kalpa. That is a Divya Yuga. So that is a day of Brahma. Okay. Then, so he's very neutral. He does not get affected. He's very detached. Then he says, 9.10, this material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So it is all happening under his control. Maya Adhyaksha. Aksha means under my supervision. Aksha is, Adhyaksha means superintendent. So he is watching over it. It's all happening under his superintendence, and it's working under his direction, producing all moving and non-moving beings. So again, according to the rule that he himself has set up, this kind of creation and annihilation keeps on taking place. Okay. So is that clear about his connection with the material energy? Okay, next slide. Okay, verses 11 to 19. So we see what a great person Krishna is. Then why is it that everybody doesn't, accept him or accept that he's a transcendental personality and worship him? So he will say, why foolish people deride Krishna? Why pure devotees or Mahatmas engage in devotional service to Krishna, and what are their activities? Krishna compares the pure devotees to three types of impersonalists. The three types are: worship himself as one with the Supreme Lord. Those are the monists. He who worships anyone as supreme, including the devatas. He who worships the universal form. So there are three types. I mean, what is there? What do they do? And then he compares them with the pure devotees. Krishna also reveals his different energies. We have seen also in 7th chapter, he revealed about how to see him in different aspects, and also in the 8th chapter. Again, in the 9th, he is revealing to us how to see him in different energies. And so we can see that for Krishna, there's no distinction between matter and spirit, because everything is coming from him. Okay, yes, next slide. So because Krishna revealed to us that he is controlling creation, maintenance, and annihilation, he is not an ordinary person as thought by the Mayavadis. What do they think? They think that when Brahman wants to enter this material world, it has to take a form. Why? Because we are all with form. We cannot understand Brahman. So he comes and takes the material form. And that is temporary. This is their understanding. But when Krishna is personally saying that all this material energy is coming from me, from my body, that he's not he's not an ordinary person. He himself is saying, he's not in the Krishna himself is saying in the battlefield that all this energy is coming from me. He's not saying Brahma Jyoti is coming from Brahma Jyoti. Then Supreme Personality of Godhead is the supreme controller, directs the material energy. That's what in text 10 we saw is he is the director of it. And transcendental body full of knowledge and bliss, proprietor of anything, and he can award liberation to everyone. So Bhagavad Gita 11, text 11, he says, 9.11, fools derive me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the supreme Lord of all that be. So that is why he's got a transcendental body full of knowledge and bliss. That's what he's saying. They do not understand my transcendental nature. And he's the supreme Lord of everything. Supreme Personality of Godhead, supreme controller, directs the material energy, proprietor of everything, can award liberation to everyone. And yet, foolish people deride him and say that he's not the Lord, he's got a material body. And that is because of them being foolish without knowledge. Yes, next slide. So why are they foolish? They cannot conceive of this, wonder how a human-like form can control both the finite and the infinite. This is their problem, because in material thing, we don't have this understanding how a person can be everywhere. Finite and infinite, how you can control. They are only used to some power being everywhere. I mean, in impersonal power, but not a person. They always feel a person means limitation. But they don't understand that Krishna can expand himself into many, many forms. And also he's got varieties of energies which do all the work he wants. Lord appears here through his internal energy. That's another thing. We have to understand that he's not coming like us. He's not under illusion. But he's coming under his internal energy. And those who surrender unto him can get out of this material energy. From the purport, we see that how, so when Krishna, if you surrender to him, we can get out of the material energy, then how can he be the product of material energy? That is the question. Okay. That is, for refuting the arguments of the Mayavadis. Yes. Next slide. And you see the pictures. Oh, okay. So, yeah. So how all the material, everything is coming from him. And he is in the spiritual world. The lotus that you see on the right, on top, is the Goloka Vrindavan, right on top. It is in the form of a lotus, and Krishna is enjoying himself there with all the gopis and cowherd, Radharani and the gopis and the cows and all the other, Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda and so many others who are there. He's enjoying himself. And here, 1/4 of his creation is the material energy. And there we see Mahavishnu is lying. And from his thing, so many pores are coming out. And, this is how the universe is created. Okay. Yes. Next slide. Foolish people cannot conceive of this. Wonder how a human-like form can control both the finite and the infinite. Lord appears so they don't understand anything about internal energy. But those who surrender to him can get out of the material energy. That's what he says. Oh, so Krishna, just by surrendering to him, we can get out of the material energy and be liberated. So Krishna is definitely liberated. How can he award liberation to us otherwise? Yes, next slide. So then he says, what? No, previous slide. No, yes. In 9.12 and 13, he says, what is the future of those who deride Krishna, who think that he is an ordinary material person? Those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demonic and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. So if somebody, even you have other desires, like, because they become demoniac and atheistic, if you make fun of Krishna, if you're offensive to him, then naturally you'll develop this kind of demonic attitude and atheism. And because of that, they can have no hopes for being liberated, or even if a great karmi or a jnani, karmi, those who are fruitive activities, those who are doing a lot of the karma kanda things, they cannot have any success even in that, or their hopes for liberation. And even if they want to get any knowledge from, the Shastras, Upanishads, Vedas, Puranas and all, they cannot get it. They cannot really understand it because of this, because they are deriding Krishna. And that's why it's so offensive to deride Krishna like that. 9.13, because of envy, that is why they're deriding. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. So those who deride Krishna, they are deluded by material nature, prakritim mohinim ashritaha, and regress to the darkest regions. This is what he says. But in the pure devotees, they are the Mahatmas, daivim prakritim ashritaha, or protected by divine nature, and they are pure devotees fixed in devotion to Krishna. So this is the comparison, contrast between those who are foolish and they make fun of Krishna, and the devotees who are considered as the Mahatmas, who accept Krishna completely, that he is transcendental and he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they are protected by the divine nature. Okay, next slide. Then he says, what are the activities of the pure devotees? Text 14 says, always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. So these are the activities of a pure devotee, always glorifying Krishna. Because they are always, it's like, it's natural. They are seeing Krishna at every step, and they are seeing how great and wonderful he is. So they are always glorifying him, endeavoring with great determination to achieve the Supreme Lord in all their endeavors. Whatever they are doing, they have this determination that by doing whatever I'm doing very perfectly for the pleasure of the Lord, I should achieve him at the end of my life, or anytime they want to achieve. This is their goal. They follow the rules and regulations, such as chanting, offering food to the Lord, fasting for Ekadashi, etc. We talked about two things, chanting and offering food to the Lord. The other thing is Ekadashi, which is the 11th day of the moon, which comes every fortnight during the waxing and the waning phase of the moon. So this Ekadashi, Krishna says, is very dear to him, that day. And on that day, what happens is the sinful reactions enter the grains and the beans. And so if we consume them, then it gives us, he's not happy with it. On the other hand, we don't take that. We can take everything else. There are substitutes to the grains and the cereals. There are some nuts we can have instead of the protein or the beans, grains and beans. Instead of beans, we have the nuts, and instead of grains, we have so many other things. The sama millet, barnyard millet, that is, and then you can have sago or sabudana, things like that. So, and all vegetables, all fruits, all milk products, everything you can have. So if we do, they are ready to follow these rules and regulations very sincerely, because they want Krishna. And anyone in any position and in any part of the world can become such a Mahatma or pure devotee. So that is the symptom. So very easily can be performed. You cannot say everyone can become an Ashtanga yogi, or everyone can become a Jnana yogi, sannyas, take sannyas and just study all the scriptures and so on. But anyone can become a devotee from any part of the world. And that is what Srila Prabhupada proved. He went all over the world, all countries, all continents of the world. He established this. And there are so many pure devotees in different parts of the world. Even in Africa, you have so many temples there, so many devotees who are practicing very sincerely in China, in Russia, in any part of this world. Okay, next. So this is the direct worship of Krishna, which pure devotees do. There are others who they also worship Krishna, but in an indirect way. And text 15, he says, others who engage in sacrifice by cultivation of knowledge worship the Supreme Lord as the one without a second, as diverse in many and in the universal form. So, the first type is, this is the lowest. We are going, one better each time. So, first, the monist worships himself as one with the Lord. That means he thinks that the Atma, that is all. Advaita philosophy is that is what most people worship, that I am the soul and this is part of the supreme Brahman. So they worship themselves as Narayana. They say that I am myself Narayana, and anyone else who has taken sannyas is also a Narayana. So they call each other as Narayana. Now I became God, as because we are one of that supreme, and so they worship themselves. Then better one is imagines a form as the supreme Lord, even devatas, because there is panchopasana worship among the impersonalists. They say you can worship either Durga or Ganesha, Lord Shiva or Krishna or Kartikeya, any of these forms. That is only temporary. Keep worshipping them because it helps you to fix your mind, and then once you become liberated, you don't need to worship them. So but this is better than the previous one because at least they're worshipping someone other than themselves. Here monist is just they are only getting Brahmajyoti through that. Then better than that is worships the universal form as Lord, because universal form is form of Krishna, but it is made up of all the external things, material things. But Krishna says that is my form. Everything is anyway come out of him and it is resting in him. So for those who cannot see anything beyond matter, Krishna himself describes, you think of me like this. Lower planetary systems are my legs, and then middle planetary systems are like my belly, and the upper planetary systems are like my chest, and so on. So in this form is also, this is even better because by worshipping that, we are developing a relationship with Krishna, and then Krishna will gradually take us to higher and higher levels of understanding. Yes, next. In the next verse, Krishna says, but it is I who am the ritual, I the sacrifice, the offering to the ancestors, the healing herb, the transcendental chant. I am the butter and the fire and the offering. So Krishna is saying that he is the in the sacrifices, yajnas, as well, both, because everything is coming from him, and so he is situated in all these sacrifices. In the ritual, the process is also him. He is the butter, the fire, and the offerings. So the fire is also one of the elements of Krishna, and so it is also Krishna. Butter also likewise, and offerings, milk products, which are put in the ghee and other things, are also Krishna. Then he is the healing herb offered to the ancestors. So he's talking about two different types of yajnas which are being performed. And the healing herb is offered to the ancestors in the form of ghee. So some medicated kind of ghee, they offer it to the ancestors. And he is the transcendental chant in the yajnas. So he says, all this, all the karmakanda processes which are mentioned in the Vedas are also Krishna. But devotional service includes the result of all this, because this is all Krishna. And what is devotional service? It is aiming at Krishna directly. So whatever you may do with all these yajnas and rituals and offerings and everything is already there. If you're just directly serving Krishna, you don't need to do any of these because it is you're directly approaching Krishna. Yes, next. Now he's telling us how to see all the different people. right? We have so many material relationships. And how is this connected with Krishna? How should we see all our relationships? It says, text 17, I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier, and the syllable Om. I am also the Rig, the Sama, and the Yajur Vedas. So, because he is the Supreme Father, and also all our father, mother, grandfather, etc., are all parts of Krishna, and so they represent Krishna for us. We have to see it like that. We have to see all these relationships as representatives of Krishna. And that is why there is so much of veneration, given in our Vedic tradition. Parents especially are considered, really, even in all the yajnas and everything, you have to take the blessings of the parents because they are representing Krishna. And I'm the support and the grandsire. Yeah, the object of knowledge of the Vedas is Krishna. I am the object of knowledge and the purifier and the syllable Om. So here we can see that Krishna is saying Om is also me. Subject matter to purify our consciousness is also Krishna, the purifier. So Krishna himself is the purifier, and the subject matter which helps to purify our consciousness is Krishna. So that is why the Hare Krishna mantra is also Krishna, because it purifies our consciousness, and Krishna is there in his name. And so in the same way, Om is also representing Krishna, and so it is Krishna. All Vedas is Krishna because there is the chanting of Om. Because Om is Krishna, and the Vedas are describing different things, but always it starts with Om, and so that is also Krishna. So by this he is telling us that you don't have to separately do all these things, because he is in everything. So if you surrender to Krishna, then you can perfectly satisfy all these, whatever rituals or people, or even chanting of Om, or the Vedic chanting. All that is not required when you surrender to Krishna and become his devotee and chant, only directly the prayer. Hare Krishna is the mantra. I mean, Krishna himself has brought that, but even other things, any other mantra which increases our devotion to him. Yes, next slide. So 9.18, Krishna says, I am the goal, the sustainer, the master, the witness, the abode, the refuge, and the most dear friend. I am the creation and the annihilation, the basis of everything, the resting place and the eternal seed. So everything is resting on Krishna's energy, is the resting place. Ultimate goal of all is Krishna. Everything is seeking to only know, understand him, and attain him. So that he is the ultimate goal. And then he is talking about, I am the abode. The abode is that all material abodes, being Krishna, creations of Krishna, is Krishna. There are so many abodes. There are so many planetary systems, countries, and then we have our cities, and then we have our home. All the abodes are actually Krishna himself. And so that is non-different from Krishna. And he is the sustainer, master. He's sustaining us, he's taking care, maintaining us. He's our master. He's the witness. No one else can witness, is aware about what are all, our thoughts are, our feelings are, what's happening in our mind, what activities we do. Krishna is the Paramatma, is a witness to everything. And he's our only refuge. At any time, Krishna is there, and we take refuge in him, and he's there to give that refuge. And the most dear friend. So he's the one who has created us, he's maintaining us and annihilating. So, what is that thing? You can hear me clearly, right? So he's the resting place and the, and the eternal seed. What is that eternal seed? It is the Mahatattva, from which this material, this universe manifests itself. Krishna creates the Mahatattva, or undifferentiated material energy, and then he glances on it, and then Shiva and Durga together, they they manifest the three modes of material nature, and then the universe manifests itself. So the bija, or the seed of that, is Krishna. The material energy is also Krishna. And basis of everything. So we can see that Krishna is the basis of everything, material and spiritual. And also he is saying original source of creation and destruction. Because here he is talking only of the material world, and he's saying I'm the basis of everything and original source of creation and destruction. We know how he creates from his pores. So many universes are coming, and then and so on. And also destruction. When he's breathing out, all these universes are coming, and in inhalation, everything is wound up. So destruction is also he is doing is because of Krishna. So Krishna is eternal cause of all causes. Anything that you see which happens materially, what we are aware of, there may be immediate causes. Definitely, we can see that, for example, now coronavirus is there. Now, what is the immediate cause? People, is it because of one thing was because it came from the animals, this virus, and because people consumed it, and then that's how it has spread. And then, okay, there may be other speculation of other theories. Maybe they were trying to do some create some biological weapons, and that is how it got released. And anyway, there are different causes. We can think about them, but those are only immediate causes. The cause of all causes is Krishna. So coronavirus is also caused by Krishna only. And so that is why we should not be disturbed. If we take shelter of God, then what happens of Krishna? Then we know this is why he is allowing all this to happen with a purpose. Nothing happens by accident. And when we know Krishna is controlling everything, then we feel confident. Okay, I have to satisfy Krishna. Anything that is giving me pain or suffering is because I've forgotten Krishna, and he's reminding me, don't be foolish and think that you're independent of me and do anything without following any rules. So that's how. So the more we're taking steps to think of Krishna and understand him and how he's working, then that is the purpose of creation. Okay, this is a long chapter. So okay, next slide. 9.19. O Arjuna, I give heat and I withhold and send forth the rain. I am immortality and I am also death personified. Both spirit and matter are in me. So Krishna gives heat and light everywhere. The sun's through the sun and electricity, he is diffusing heat and light everywhere. Krishna checks rain and gives rain. How he is checking the rain during summer months, the rains don't come. And only during the rainy seasons, he allows the rains to come. And he sustains and prolongs our life. So that is what he says, I'm immortality, because our life is prolonged, and that is because of Krishna. And he also appears as death at the end. Krishna is both matter and spirit. So an advanced devotee can see Krishna everywhere, in matter also, because Krishna is there through his energy everywhere. Everything has come from him. Okay, next slide. So then verses 20 to 26, demigod worship, which neglects Krishna as the supreme enjoyer, is improper and causes fall down. Krishna carries what a pure devotee lacks and preserves what he already has. Worship of devatas ultimately worshipping Krishna, but in a wrong way. Worshippers of Krishna go to the eternal planets of Vaikuntha or Krishna Loka, but others reach different temporary abodes according to whom they worship. So it's comparing the worship of devatas with worship of him. Yes, next slide. So the three Vedas elevate us to higher planets. And who are there in the higher planets? The devatas. And devatas assisting Krishna in universal affairs. So this Vedas, the three Vedas, actually one who knows all the three Vedas is called a Trivedi. And the one who knows the purpose of the Vedas, he is enlightened and he surrenders to Krishna. But there are those who are simply addicted to doing all these rituals. They don't have any higher knowledge, and they are promoting this, assisting Krishna. So who are the devatas? They are assisting Krishna in the universal affairs. And so Krishna is only Indra is in charge of the administrative affairs, and Indra, and Krishna is in charge of the whole creation of everything. So Devata worship is indirect worship of Krishna. There are so many Devatas, and Krishna is only giving one the faith to worship them, and he is only allowing the Devatas to fulfill the worshippers' desires. But still, he is saying, they're all parts of me. And you can think, okay, if they're parts of Krishna, then why not we can approach them? But it is suppose they don't know that where should the water of a tree, where should the water be put? On the roots or on the branches? Branches are also part of the tree. But the whole tree will be benefited if you water the root. So if you worship Krishna, then Devatas being part of Krishna will also be satisfied with us. And they will also be benefited because they're part of Krishna. So this is the proper way to worship them. Yes. 20 and 21. Yes, 21 is, those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. Purified of sinful reactions, they take birth on pious heavenly planet of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights. So by worshipping the Devatas, what good happens is, at least they have to give up modes of passion and ignorance, and they have to be elevated more in the mode of goodness to reach those heavenly planets. But once the effect of that, their karma is over, I mean, whatever worship, the pious activity is finished, they have to come back to the earth, fall down to the earth. Yes. Next. The position of the pure devotees, 9.22. Okay, 9.21, I didn't read out that. When they thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. And here he's talking about one who's worshipping Krishna. But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. So the pure devotees always worship Krishna with exclusive devotion. They don't try to, also include some other form and so on. They are like a chaste, this is like being very chaste to Krishna's exclusive devotion to his form. Not that they look down on others, but the kind of attachment is only to the form of Krishna. Of course, different devotees have also some eternal relationships. They may be attracted to different forms also. That is okay, but they accept that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and they are exclusively worshipping him. Later on, Krishna will, even if they have a relationship with Rama or Narayana and all that, that will be revealed later. But now they, okay, meditate on his transcendental form, completely determined to achieve Krishna. Krishna carries what they lack and preserves what they have, materially and spiritually. So we may think, oh, why should Krishna bother so much, to take care of us personally? Because that is Krishna's pleasure. It's not a burden. For others, he is allowing the material energy to do everything. But for a devotee, he personally does it. And there is this pastime of Arjunacharya. He was writing a commentary on Bhagavad Gita. And for this verse, he had written that Krishna personally carries what a devotee lacks and preserves, he had written. Then he thought, how can personally Krishna do that? So he had struck that word. And then after that, they were very poor actually, a poor Brahmana. And he told his wife, okay, I'll go and collect. Every day he would collect alms from different homes and bring, and then she would cook. So he went out, he had his bath, and he went to have his bath and then collect alms. Meanwhile, two young boys come to their house. They, quickly knock the door and they bring a lot of things, a lot of food items, grains, cereals, fruits, vegetables, milk, everything, fit for a big feast. And they give it to her and they say, please take it fast. We have to rush because, otherwise your husband will beat us. So I said, what? My husband beating anyone? He never beats anyone. So then that dark one, he will show his back and he'll say, see, he has struck me so badly. And so she'll be shocked. She'll think, she'll be totally bewildered. What is my husband doing? Why does he go and beat up such nice boys? And so she cooks a nice feast and then she starts eating it also because she's so bewildered, so disturbed by what her husband had done. And then when the husband comes back, he's also shocked. Why my wife is eating before me without serving me, and she's eating by herself. So he asks, what happened? So she tells him, why did you beat those boys? And what boys? Then she says that one, he asks her, describe me, which boys? I never bet any boys. So she describes one dark looking boy, and then there was a fair boy, and they both brought all these things. So then Arjunacharya realized, oh my God, my wife is so fortunate. She has seen Krishna and Balaram. And then he realized, what is this beating on the back and all that? Then he realized in his book, he had scratched Krishna's name, that Krishna will personally give. And he wanted to disprove him. So personally, he brought all the things. Whatever they required, Krishna personally came and delivered. And to show that, yes, Krishna wants to serve his own devotees, those who are always, depending on him, thinking of him. He personally takes care of the devotees and preserve what they have. Okay. And yes, next slide. Destination of different worshippers. Of Devatas, they go to the Devatas in different planets, material planets. If you worship ancestors, you go to the ancestors, the Pitru planets. If you worship ghosts and spirits, you go to the ghostly planets, the Yakshas, Rakshas and Pishachas. So there is, Bhuvarloka, above this earth planets, Bhurloka, there is Bhuvarloka. And in that Bhuvarloka, all these kind of, ghostly people stay there. So if you worship those who do black magic and all worship these spirits, they go to such planets. And if we worship Krishna, we will live with him eternally. And impersonalists, they merge with the Brahmajyoti. Okay, next. So then he says, what is, what do the worship of Krishna mean? Krishna accepts even a little water, leaf, fruit, or flower to exchange love with devotees. The verse is, if one offers me with love and devotion, a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. He's saying it in singular. Even if you offer one flower, one fruit, a little water, he is satisfied. What he wants is only devotion. Whereas the worship of the Devatas is very, very much more complicated. A lot of yajnas and costly things and chanting of so many Vedic mantras, because the devatas are interested in seeing what you're offering, whereas Krishna is interested in seeing how much devotion you have in your offering. He's not interested in those offerings, does not accept anything from non-devotees. So he's saying, if one offers me with love and devotion, then only, so devotee, he only takes from devotee, and devotee gives Krishna what he wants from the vegetable kingdom. Leaf, flower, fruit, all these are from, he's not saying, give me meat, give me liquor, or other things. So he gives what Krishna wants. Impersonalists cannot understand Krishna's senses. So just imagine, so devotees, they know that Krishna's got senses. He can eat with his eyes also, just by glancing it. Every sense of his can perform the senses work of other senses. So we know that how he glanced over material nature and he impregnates her with all the living entities. So by just seeing with his eyes, he can also eat. So that is why devotees offer Krishna with love, and they also accept the prasadam back, what Krishna has accepted and given to us, and they can enjoy prasadam. Whereas the impersonalists, because they don't know that Krishna's got senses and he can accept, they think Krishna's body is material, so they have to undergo strict austerity. They can't enjoy nice food and so on, in order to control the senses. Whereas a devotee, by eating prasadam, which is spiritualized by Krishna accepting it, his senses automatically, very easily get controlled. So, and also we see the simplicity in the worship of Krishna. Krishna wants more of devotion, not pompous, very extravagant worship of him. Yes, next. So verses 27 to 34, this is the last section. Krishna advises doing all our activities as an offering to him. Do yukta vairagya, using the fruits of activities in the service of Krishna. Purifies us from sinful reactions, gives liberation and complete surrender to Krishna. Krishna is impartial to all and yet partial to his devotees. Accidental fall down of a devotee should be excused if he continues his devotional services. No distinction between lower and higher classes of people in devotional service. Krishna declares this world temporary and full of misery, advises us to completely take shelter of him and go back to him at the end of life. Okay, next slide. Next slide. This is just the summary of the verses. I'm going to do verse. Next slide, please. Vrinda, can you please change the slide?
Mataji, I've already changed 2 slides, Mataji. I have to change the next one also?
Yes. That is only the text, summary. Okay. Where have you come? No, go to the one before this. No, before this. Before this. Yes. So Krishna says in the text 27, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. So all our activities, whatever it is, working, eating, offering, charity, austerities.
The slide, sir.
Huh? We should do it as an offering to Krishna. These are activities which we do. I mean, we are, all our daily routine, our activities and so on. Whatever we do, Krishna says that you perform that as an offering to me. So that is Yukta Vairagya, giving fruits of our work to Krishna. So it purifies our sinful reactions and gives liberation and surrender to Krishna. 28, he says, In this way, you'll be freed from bondage to work and its auspicious and inauspicious results. With your mind fixed on me in this principle of renunciation, you'll be liberated and come to me. This is what we saw in the 3rd chapter and so on, how we need to do work, karma yoga. And this is the level of Nishkam Karma Yoga, where you've overcome all the desires. I mean, more and more you're giving the fruits, engaging it in Krishna service. We start with using everything and in the service of Krishna. So we purify it. Okay? Yes, next. 9.29, he says, I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all, but whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to everyone. So he is not partial to anyone. He is like a desire tree giving to everybody. The rain pours on everywhere, not just to pious people or his devotees. So he is impartial. He provides everyone generously, equal to all, but he's partial to, and he's partial to none. But a devotee, he's a friend and is partial. That is, in that also there is impartiality, because anyone can surrender to him and become his devotee. Then he will show exclusive, we see in his dealings with Pandavas, he was so carefully taking care of them, and their enemies became Krishna's enemies also, because Duryodhana and Pati were so envious of Pandavas. So then Krishna also rejected him. So like that, he's partial to his devotee. Yes, next slide. Balancing 9.30, Krishna says, even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service to me, he is to be considered saintly, because he is properly situated in his determination. So, when we are doing Krishna consciousness, we have to balance material and spiritual activities. We are not renouncing and going away somewhere. So because we are still in the material world, sometimes because of past habits, we may be pulled to do some activity which is against Krishna consciousness. Accident will fall down due to past habit. But if still engaged in devotional service, he is saintly. Why? Because he quickly becomes purified. And Krishna says, my devotee never perishes. So 9.31, he says, he quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. So this is only about an accidental fall down and not some premeditated thing. Okay, I'll be a devotee also, and I will also do some, some sinful activity. That is not saintly. But say, because the material world is so, polluting, and because of our past habits, sometimes, even practicing devotee may get in, especially in the beginning stages, when he's fully purified, that won't happen. But because of something or the other, it is an accidental fall down, then Krishna says, you don't have to do any particular purificatory rite or anything, because your devotional activity itself is so purifying. So he'll quickly become purified. Yes, next. So Krishna says, that anyone who takes shelter of Krishna can get highest perfection. No distinction between higher and lower castes or classes. So normally what you see, this is not true of the Vedas and, Vedic rituals and all that. Only Brahmanas are allowed to perform. And or among the Brahmanas also, only male Brahmanas. Women are not, taking part in those things. Though, for a grihastha, the wife also has to be, she has to light the lamp, and in between, like that, she is also a part of that yajna. But women are not expected to learn all these processes and so on. So what used to happen, in the normal, this Vedic rites and all, it is only some people, the higher castes and higher classes, they are allowed to do all that. But in bhakti, in devotional service, there is nothing like that. Anybody can get the highest perfection. So here he says, O son of Pritha, text 32, those who take shelter of me, though they be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas and Shudras, can attain the supreme destination. So why are they considered lower birth? Because they cannot do all these these spiritual activities. So it's considered. But in bhakti, there is nothing like that. Everybody can do and get the highest perfection. Okay. Then text 33, he says, how much more this is so of the righteous Brahmanas, the devotees and the saintly kings. Therefore, having come to this temporary, miserable world, engage in loving service to me. It says, so the material world is temporary and miserable. So devotional service can solve all problems of all the people. That is why we need to do. And what are the, we see the 4: birth, death, old age, disease, and so on. So all these problems can be solved by taking this thing. You see Dhruva Maharaj, how he was blessed. He had a problem. He was rejected by his father due to his stepmother, and the stepbrother who pushed him out. And she declared that you can never become king, even though he was the elder son, because you didn't take birth in my womb, and so on. And he was so upset, and his mother said, I cannot help you, only the Supreme Lord can. And so he was looking for this opposite. He wanted to be king, and he had a material desire, but he came and worshipped the Lord, and the Lord came before him, blessed him. But when he saw him, actually, he thought, what's the use of all this kingdom? I'm very happy just, after seeing you. But he said, no. And he, because you desired it, I'll give you. So in that way, even if you have a material problem, that gets solved by worshipping Krishna. And then you get purified, and then you become liberated, and you can go back home, back to Godhead. Okay. Yes. Next slide. And the last verse. This is the most important verse of the Bhagavad Gita, and that is why it is placed right in the middle. It says, Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji suru me vakshyasi yuktva atmanam madparayana. Engage your mind, always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. So we have to engage oneself always in thinking of Krishna, become his devotee, which is the 9 forms of devotional service, offer obeisances to him and worship him. And becoming fully absorbed will attain him. So this is the sum and substance of this chapter, the most confidential knowledge, how we can become united with Krishna by performing pure devotional service. Yes. So thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Yes, you have some questions. Yeah. What is the purpose for releasing this cosmic energy after every millennium? Oh, that's a very good question. Because we have desires, unfulfilled desires. It's there in the subtle body. And so temporarily at the end of Brahma's night or end of Brahma's life, we are absorbed, but then those desires are still there. And as soon as creation takes place, we get those bodies suitable to fulfill our desires. It is not that everyone were born as apes and slowly this thing. All of us have a different kind of desires are there, different bodies. And so we are all taken in, and again he creates so that we can fulfill those desires and get purified and go back to him. What is do as offering to Mataji? So, offering to Krishna, Mataji. So, offering to Krishna is food first, Whatever is in the mode of goodness, you can offer. Okay, like rice and dal. Pulses and vegetables. If it is like in the temples, for example, you can use all garam masalas and so many things. You can make varieties of whatever you're cooking. Only thing is, in the temples they don't use onion and garlic, right? So we don't use that. But you can begin by offering fruits. Okay, you're having fruits, you can offer this thing, milk and yogurt, and also cooked food, which can be offered to Krishna. You start by offering that, put a tulsi leaf on that and chant 3 times Hare Krishna mantra and ask Krishna, please accept this. And he will accept, because you're thinking of him. And you should not have tasted it while cooking, then you can offer it. Yes. Is that okay? Put summary slide again. Oh yeah, summary slide. Oh my God, you have not put that. Yes. Go to the summary slide. I didn't. Summary of the chapter. It was quite a intense chapter. Every verse had something very special. Description of the most confidential knowledge. Krishna told what is special about that knowledge. Qualities required to receive this knowledge. That is non-enviousness and faith. All-pervading energy of Krishna, but Krishna is personal. Material world repeatedly created and annihilated. Foolish people cannot understand how Krishna can be personal if he is controlling both the finite and the infinite. So they sink down to delusion and repeated birth and death. A Mahatma is constantly engaged in serving Krishna. Krishna carries everything for them. 3 types of impersonalists. Difference between worship of devatas and pure devotional service. How to connect Krishna's service. Krishna is impartial to all but partial to his devotees. The Lord pardons accidental fall downs. Devotee never perishes. No difference between lower and higher classes of men in bhakti. 9 processes of pure devotional service. Most important verse placed in the middle. So this pure devotional service, the end. So, and the important verses are here. Point 2, 2, 4, 10, 11, 13, 14, 22, 23, 25, 26, 27, 29, 30, 32, 34. So many verses, all, conveying very, very important messages. Okay. Have you taken down those verses, ones? Okay, we go to the last screen, last slide. Please go to the next slide.
Matthew, this is the next slide.
No, there's one more.
No, this is the one.
Okay, this is the one I meant. So you have Gaurantai, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda. I mean, it's quite late. I'll just tell you in briefly about Jaga and Madai. They were 2 criminals. They were born in Brahmana families, but they were very, very, degenerated. They were not following anything and all criminal activities. They would look at the Bhagavatam and find out which is the most sinful activity and for which you will be punished in hell, and they would commit that. Like that. They all rapes and murder and looting money, you name it, any criminal activity these people had done. And Nityananda Prabhu wanted to give mercy to them to prove what is the extent of mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this age. So he went, first time when he went along with another devotee to preach to him, they got so angry, they were drunk and they started chasing them and they ran for their life. Second time again, they were doing Sankirtan and going by. And then Jaga and Madai got very angry for disturbing them. And they were going to, because they were drunk. And they wanted to hit Nityananda Prabhu on his head. He hit him with a pot, which had liquor. And it struck him very hard and blood started flowing from his head. And Nityananda Prabhu said, just because you tried to murder me, do you think I'm going to stop caring for you? And this touched their soul like anything. Where do you find such selfless love? That, they are trying to kill him, and he is still thinking, he's not bothered about himself, he's only thinking about their welfare. And then Jagai will tell Madai, no, stop, because, this looks like he's God, because ordinary people cannot be like this. And so he surrenders. Meanwhile, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes, he's very angry, he brings the Sudarshan Chakra to kill them. But Nityananda stops him and says, in this age, you are not killing asuras. You have come to remove their asuric tendencies with love by giving them Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu agrees, and then Madai also surrenders because he sees Jagai is accepted and the Lord is embracing him and all that. So Madai also surrenders, and the Lord asks them to promise that henceforth they will not commit any sinful activities. They bathe and come, and the Lord gives them diksha, and for a minute all the his body, for a fraction of a second, his body becomes black. That many sins is absorbed from them. So this is the mercy of Gauranitai, who are the most merciful in this age. So there are many Gauranitai photos available in the net. You can download that and keep it. If you can frame it, or you can, this thing, what do you call that? Laminate it and chant Hare Krishna in front of them, and they'll become so happy and bless you, because they are the avatar for this age. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the avatar, Yuga avatar, and they can give us all very easy to approach the Lord by worshipping them. Okay, thank you very much. So we will chant 3 times Panchatattva mantra and the Hare Krishna mantra. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita, Gadadhar, Srivasadi, Gaura Bhakta Brinda, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Yes, please say. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita, Gadadhar, Srivasadi, Gaura Bhakta Brinda. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita, Gadadhara, Srivas Adi, Gaura Bhakta Brinda. Then we chant 3 times Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare
Krishna
Hare,
Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare
Hare